The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes.
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson at Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Hello and welcome to TV Party Tonight. I'm your host and I'm coming to you from the void. I'm kidding. I just am having some minor visual problems, hence why you can't see my face right now. But yes, it is me, Alexis Hejna, and I am here with Mark Radulich. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing pretty good.
All right, and we are here to talk about Welcome to Chippendales, a biographical drama miniseries created by Robert Siegel. This is the same guy who gave us Pam and Tommy. He was also the writer. You couldn't resist, could you?
Not even a little.
It's also the guy who wrote The Wrestler and The Founder. The stars, we're going to pronounce his name a million times, God help us, Kumail Nanjiani. This is the same actor. This is a comedic actor who got an Oscar nomination for co-writing The Big Sick with his wife. You probably recognize him more recently from The Eternals. So yes, this is the tale of Steve Banerjee, an Indian immigrant seeking the American dream, who ends up building Chippendales, one of the largest male erotic dancer corporations in the world. And yet you never would have guessed that it ended up leading to blackmail and murder.
Murder! It was murder, she wrote.
It also stars Murray Bartlett as Nick DeNoia, his partner, choreographer, and eventual murder victim. We also have Annalie Ashford as his wife, as Steve's wife Irene. We have Juliette Lewis as Denise, another staff member who supposedly, according to this, invented the breakaway pants. I don't know how realistic that is, but whatever.
Did you ever see Natural Born Killers?
No, I haven't actually. I know I need to.
You really do. It's an interesting movie, but it has provided my lasting memory of Juliette Lewis. Like, if I never remember anything else she's ever done in her career, her screaming at Woody Harrelson, "What, you want to fuck other women? Where the fuck are you going?" Like, never. That is burned in my brain.
Lovely.
Juliette Lewis. That and Rodney Dangerfield as the incestuous pervert parent. Good stuff.
Lovely.
Yes.
All right. So we never actually talked. Are we going to discuss episode by episode, or you just want to talk about the show as a whole?
Show as a whole, please.
All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at our main character, Steve Banerjee, who is, of course, born Somen Banerjee, changed his name, who started off as just a regular guy, regular old Indian immigrant, but he wanted to be just like Hugh Hefner. So he kept trying all these new ideas, thinking he could capitalize on it, until he came up with the idea of having men do a striptease at his club. We also get a little look at in the first episode alone, we actually get a look at Paul Snider and Dorothy Stratton. And the tragedy then unfortunately surrounded them. These two were real people. Dorothy was a Playboy playmate whose career was on the rise, and Paul was a man whose career was kind of going in the opposite direction. he is played by Dan Stevens, one of my actual favorite actors right now. He always leaves such an incredible impact whenever he's on screen. But unfortunately, we did have to. Sorry, I'm getting an update here on my phone. I'm trying to. It's like, no, I'll talk to you later.
Tell the people you're busy.
I'm trying. It's my dad, so it's like, dude, I'm working right now.
Oh yeah, inevitably, my parents love to call and text while I'm on a recording.
As unfortunately, we do see the fallout with Paul doing a murder-suicide with Dorothy. It is very tragic.
Like you do.
Yeah, of course. So let's go ahead. Like I said, let's go ahead and talk about Steve's rise first. This is a guy. He is an immigrant. He wants to fulfill the American dreams. The whole reason he came over to America. It's the reason that his family is still over there. So, what stuck out to you, at least in the early episodes, about Steve?
All right, you pitched me this show, and you're like, it's by the same people who did Pam and Tommy. And so between the content, the nature of the show, it's about male strippers, and it's by people from a show we already liked and reviewed. I was like, sold American. But I don't know anything about the Chippendale story. So I'm watching this first episode, and it goes through so much. Like, that first episode shows him being offered an opportunity to become a higher manager of this convenience store. And he says, no, I have dreams. I'm going to open a backgammon club. He does. The backgammon club fails. So he kind of converts it to more of a nightclub since he has the space. And, it's not that hard of a transition. And he gets to stripping by way of trying different gimmicks to get people in the door. He finally, and when he lands on it, it becomes popular, and the episode just keeps going. And so his male review gets popular. People are coming. The girls are enjoying it. And then the choreographer shows up and says, yeah, this is trash. Let me come in and actually design a show for you that's worth people seeing and not the seedy environment you've created. And so he does, and it's successful. And we're off to the races, and then the episode ends. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what other possible story is there then? Like I did a thing, I opened a business, it was successful, it's still successful today. Roll credits. So my impression after the first episode, and we're not going episode by episode, but I definitely needed to talk about the structure of this thing. Was I was, for the first time in a long time, truly intrigued by where could this possibly go? Doing no reading, having no context, no foreknowledge of what this was going to be. I legitimately had no clue what the next episode would be about. I'm like, I feel like they told the whole story in one episode. That first episode, Alexis, was like way front loaded. If they had wanted to drag this out a little bit more, you could have cut that into 2 or 3 more episodes.
Absolutely. It's kind of funny, actually. I did not realize when I first saw the trailer for this that Steve Banerjee ended up murdering his partner. I legit had no idea. I saw the trailer. I thought it looked like it was fun. Again, I saw it was from the guys who did Pam and Tommy, which was a very enjoyable show. And I asked my husband, I said, hey, do you want to watch this? And he watched the trailer and he goes, oh yeah, it's about the guy who ended up murdering his partner. I'm like, wait, what? It turns out that Andre, who's a very big true crime fan, had seen a thing on, I don't remember exactly what he watched, but it was just like a true crime biopic about Banerjee. And yeah, he told me what happened. I'm like, oh, okay, then I guess that's where they're going with this.
Yeah, as the show unfolds and you start, one of the things that we do when we review shows is, again, instead of a episode by episode recitation of the events that happened and the subsequent geeking out, what we do is we examine like the themes. One of the big themes of the show is almost mental illness. In that Steve is like this highly driven, hyper vigilant figure, but he is plagued with self-doubt, paranoia. A big reoccurring theme throughout the show is the competition between him and what's the
the choreographer's name again?
Nick Denoya.
Nick, where Nick has all these great ideas and Nick has professional experience in entertainment that he's using for the success of the club, and Steve can't take the win. Like his wife, who I love her in this show. I got to see what else she's done. But Steve's wife, who is also the bookkeeper and accountant, she actually says to him one point, she was like, "At what point are you going to stop fighting success? Everything is in the working towards the success of the club, and the success of the club benefits you." And you alone, Steve, you're the one getting the largesse of this whole thing, of everyone else's hard work. So your name is not the one that's in lights. Who gives a shit? Take the wealth that everyone else's hard work has given you and be happy. And he can't. The man, over the course of, I think it's 9 episodes, can't get out of his own way to enjoy the wealth other people created for him after he got the ball rolling. And I found that to be an intriguing aspect of the show, that this ultimately, as a drama, is a tragedy. That I don't know if you ever read the D&D books, but in its own sort of weird way, it's like the Lord Soth thing of, this is your opportunity, don't fuck it up. And he can't get out of his own way to not fuck it up, and he brings about the cataclysm.
Pretty much. It really is tragic just to watch that he really is
There's people out there going, did he just compare D&D to the fucking Chippendales? I don't know if I should keep watching this or if this is the most amazing podcast ever. Keep going.
Yeah, like I said, he's just unable to let go of his own ego. I think my favorite moment that really shows just who Steve is as a person. We have an episode where Nick has finally convinced him to open a club in New York. And he goes to the premiere, and it's a huge hit. And Steve's standing outside, and it's snowing. And being from Bombay and then moving to LA, he had never actually seen snow. And he's just kind of mesmerized by it. It's so peaceful. And Nick hits him with a snowball, and he's like, "What was that?" And he's like, "Oh, you've never been in a snowball fight?" And he shows him how to make a snowball, and they have a cute little snowball fight, and it's fun. And you see this joy in both of them, and then all of a sudden, Steve loses the advantage and starts getting hit with more, and he starts crying for Nick to stop. And he says, "You're such a bully," and Nick's just like, "That's a snowball fight. That's what it is."
What you're missing is the brilliance of that scene, in that, depending on your perspective, can be seen 2 different ways. The way that you just described, or the other way in which Nick is so frustrated, despite himself, with Steve and Steve's control issues. And Nick, it's definitely pointed to from about 50 yards away, but it's never totally dealt with. I mean, a little bit with the investor that he meets in New York, but not all the time, and not enough to where I can say this they fully dealt with it. But Steve's sort of frustration and having to wrestle with his own wrestling with his frustration that he can't be in charge, that he can't be leading things, that he can't be Steve, because there can be only one Steve. And in that scene, Nick kind of loses control of himself. Like, if you've ever been in a situation where it starts out all fun and games, but deep inside you're so mad at someone, you're so frustrated, you're so saddened by their lack of whatever it is you needed from them, their inability to give that to you, that something that starts off innocently and playfully becomes violent, becomes aggressive.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. That's why I said that scene plays 2 different ways depending on what your perspective is. What I saw, and I saw the way you described it. I'm not blind. It's Steve lost the advantage. Steve felt bullied. Steve cried. The other way, Nick had an advantage, and all of this stuff bubbled out, and he just started hammering Steve and stopped seeing Steve like turtling up, and just kept hammering him until Steve yelled loud enough to shake him out of it. And then Nick, and it's such great acting. It's great performance in this, great performances in the subtlety. he knew he fucked up, but he's got such an ego, and he's so angry with Steve inherently that he won't admit it, and instead goes, "It's just a snowball fight. It's just a snowball fight. What are you getting so worked up about?" And and Steve's like, "You're a bully," and Nick's like, "Whatever," and that's the end of the scene.
Yeah.
But that's some brilliant writing where, depending on what your perspective is, that scene plays differently.
Absolutely. We have so many scenes with Steve. It just shows how, again, there's got to be some diagnosis for his ego. We have a scene where he sees another club in LA offering male exotic dancing for one night only, and he says that they're insulting him. And
you're talking about like a personality disorder.
Yeah.
It's a mental illness, but it's definitely a mental illness of the behavioral kind. And there's paranoid, there's antisocial, there's narcissistic. Go on TikTok, you'll find a bunch. But
I'm sure.
My point is, what you're talking about, Steve's inability to accept somebody else might be doing the same thing as him, and it hurting him mentally. He is hurt by the fact that somebody took something from him. He's got such hypervigilance about things that he's like threatening the guy, and the guy's like, "Fucking America, man! You don't have this locked up. This ain't Mickey Mouse. You don't own the IP, brother."
Haha.
I didn't even realize I was making a joke. But that's basically what he says to him. It's just like, "You don't own the copyright to male strippers. I can do this if I want." And Steve's like, "No, you can't. That's a personality disorder, Alexis."
Absolutely. He just is unable to deal with any kind of competition.
Mhm.
I actually find it interesting. Andre and I also watched the A&E biography available on Hulu about the murders with Strippendales, or Strippendales with Chippendales.
So on the nose.
Strippendales is actually the name of the company that Steve Banerjee's son opened up.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, very on the nose. It turns out
we're not even going to pretend to be classy. We're just going to call male strippers.
Yeah, pretty much. But it turns out that all of those arsons were just attempts. Apparently, Ray Colon and his crew just threw little Molotov cocktails through the window. They were caught easily. The fires were contained, and the show still went on that night. They were able to just, board up the damage.
Just sweep it. It's a little burnt wood. It's fine.
Yeah.
Listen,
I also
nothing can get between women and their abs and their penises. Listen, that's just the way it is. Well, fire's not going to stop that.
I also find it interesting to look at Steve's racism, because this is actually something I've seen a lot in business. Because Steve himself says that he's not racist. I mean, he's not white, but he is horribly racist to his main lead dancer, a black man named Otis.
Yeah,
to the
now I
point
remember
that
what you're talking about.
Yeah, to the point that even Otis, even though again he's his best dancer, he gets the biggest tips, all the women love him, he doesn't get put on the calendar.
Okay, is it Steve's racism, or is it the tacit acknowledgement that this country is racist and only likes black people in a certain way? Well, this is what the 80s we're talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
So relative to the time period, only likes black people a certain way at a certain time doing a certain thing. I mean, it kind of goes to the early blackface stuff in this country of, we're good with black people so long as you humiliate yourself for our entertainment. That's fine. That's worth keeping you around for. There's your value. Make us feel better by your buffoonery. And I don't think it's that Steve is racist so much that he sees, because he's experienced it himself as an Indian, he sees racism in this country and is going, okay, the market is middle to upper middle class white women. Those women get their money from their men. Their men hate black people and any sort of power or showing any kind of sexual prowess to their white women. Therefore, in order to make money, let's not upset the apple cart where any of those things are existing. And that comes out in him not wanting the black guy in the calendar and not wanting this or that, because again, let's not upset the money tree. And the money tree is white men. I can't, from a moral, ethical standpoint, I'm with you. Steve is bad. On a business standpoint, he's doing the right thing. He's trying to make the most money in a world that is utterly unfair.
True, but it's still racism. He's still participating in a racist act by not giving Otis his due. And then we find out
You're
later
talking about like
that,
passive racism. Like I'm
yeah,
going along to get along in what is already a racist environment. So I may not particularly hate black people, but I'm participating in the act of minimizing black people, dismissing them, that sort of thing.
we later find out that he actually handed out VIP cards specifically to white clientele.
Oh, that was a reaction to him, though. His mistreatment in the restaurant, or perceived mistreatment in the restaurant.
But again, passive racism is still racism. And I have seen a lot of people who participate in this, who constantly act like it's like, well, no, I'm not racist. I just acknowledge that the world is racist. But you're still doing racist things.
Yeah, you're still doing the racism. I get it.
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't matter if Banerjee, from a business standpoint, is right about how, the fact that the calendars wouldn't sell in the South if for a month women look at a black man.
Yes, we cannot have a naked black man hanging in the kitchen of a white man. This is not going to fly.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's by the fact that he is still minimizing Otis is racism. The fact that he's admitting he's minimizing Otis because he's black.
So just to be clear, and so people listening are like I don't disagree with any of what you said. I think I'm citing the complexity of the socio-political dynamic that was going on in the show that the show is talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's a multi-layered and very complicated issue, but it's one that I have seen a lot of. I have seen a lot of businesses who say it's like, well, no, I'm not racist, but I can't, put black people in this ad because it's going to reflect badly on my company, because there's going to be a lot of people who are going to look at that and say, oh, he's, serving minorities. We don't want to deal with him.
Well, you don't even have to look at racism. You can look at any kind of prejudice and and the passivity of that prejudice. So don't ask, don't tell in the military. I would say that's an example of prejudice against gay people, but it's like, we don't want you to express yourself fully because we're uncomfortable with this. We feel like it takes away from the military. We have all kinds of reasons why we don't want gays in the military, but we need bodies. And we don't want to be in a position of outwardly banning you from the military. So just don't fucking tell people you're queer. Just keep it to yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Passive prejudice if you don't like racism. But I think that's probably like the best and most modern example of that sort of thing that everyone's like more or less aware of.
Very true. So yeah, we got that. We got the passive racism. It's also, I think, worth pointing out that in the A&E biography, it's pointed out that the two dancers that he wanted dead from the London-based dance troupe, Adonis, in real life, those were former Chippendales dancers. They quit and moved to the UK, and they took jobs there. He wanted them killed because he said that they were, again, insulting him by working for another company.
Speaks to his abandonment issues, You can't leave me, so I'll kill you instead. Like the show doesn't totally go in this direction, but there is definitely leanings towards painting Steve as almost like a mob boss.
Exactly.
I think about certain crime shows. Take a drink, everybody. I'm going to make a Wire reference. So I talked about this with season 5 with Marlowe, And, and as soon as the cops pull off Marlowe, the first things out of his mouth is, all right, Chris and Snoop, I need you to go back to murdering people. And the first person he wants murdered is the guy that talks shit about him.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing people with, Steve, Marlowe, any number of people, when they have a degree of power, and the first thing they want to do is kill people who talk shit. Kill people who they've perceived as slighting them in some way.
Mm-hmm. So
y'all people in the Radulich and Broadcast Network better hope that I never have money. Tell you that right now.
Well, doesn't that mean that I'll actually get paid for once?
You won't be alive to spend it.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Well, you're slighting me. My perceived slights from you. Moving on.
Yeah. So again, we see more of the fallout between Nick and Steve. We also see Steve making some pretty stupid business moves. The episode with the proofs for the calendar freaking killed me, because again, I used to work in the publication business, and the fact that he doesn't look at that, I'm like, it's going to bite him on the ass. There's going to be something wrong with him. We got a freaking Chekhov's gun as a calendar here.
Yeah, I don't know. Did that really happen? Did they have like that substantial of a fuck up?
If he did, it wasn't included in the biography series.
Okay.
So
also, like, I don't know. I don't know if that really happened, but I also find it hard to believe that you've been making calendars for this long, and on this particular set of calendars, you put 31 days in all the, I don't know. It was one of those where I accepted it as part of the drama, but I'm not entirely sure I believe that would really happen.
And then we got the whole thing with the tour, in which he's getting half the money from the tour, and that's pretty much the only thing keeping him and his wife's, out of the, off the streets. But he becomes convinced that Nick is still cheating him. And I remember watching this going, it's like, your wife's a bookkeeper. Just tell Nick that Irene needs to look over the books from the tour for some reason, dealing with taxes or something, I don't know, and have her confirm this.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you making such a big deal of assuming and not confirming? But that's just what we got out of Nick. He was unable to put his ego aside to do any kind of fact checking.
Yeah, the need for Steve, I mean, the thing with the tour and that whole scene where they make the deal in the diner on a napkin,
which really did happen,
that goes to, again, the mental stuff with Steve, where he has a need to prove his worth by handling things, by fix them, by being successful. Like, it hurts him to have to share the success with other people. He was willing to do it when he was on his ass, but now that they've been successful and he's attaching his self-worth to the success of others, so he is less worthy the more successful everyone else is. So in a need to kind of prove himself to his wife and to himself, he wants to have some successes. So he's doing things in secret. Like, that whole scene is about him, like, I'm going to fix it on my own, and I'm going to look like the big hero, and everyone will love me, and I'll be good. It's like, and it's like, where am I getting that from? Go back to, like, the flashbacks of him talking to his mom and never quite feeling good enough for her, and her telling him he's not doing the good things by making the decisions that he is. Like, I think she wanted him to stay in India and help with the family business, and he's like, no, I want to strike out on my own. And she's like, I don't see any value in you doing that.
Yeah, she says the line something to the effect of, not everyone is meant to be rich.
Right. He is desperate to prove to, among other people, his mom that he is good. And if he is successful, then he is good and he will have done so. And the mom is like, I don't even accept your premise. Like, your whole logic is flawed. If you did the things we asked you to do, you'd be showing you're a good son and I would love you then. But this other shit that you're doing, I have no, that you're doing to show me that you're good, I place no value in. You are utterly unconvinced me. And Steve really struggles with that. And so then he turns to his wife and he's like, well, I'll prove it to you. And all his wife wants him to do is communicate with her. Boy, can we all readily identify with this. Like the wife's like, could you just work in concert with me? Could you not go do things in a shady way in the dark? Hide things from me. Like, be a good upfront businessman. Do the right thing, as Saint Spike Lee says, and come to me with stuff. Like, let me run the numbers. Let me make sure things are okay. If Woody had gone to the police, none of this would have ever have happened. But instead, Steve has such a desire to prove himself that he does things on his own, and he does not consult his wife, and he fucks up along the way.
Pretty much.
That tour, there's no way he wasn't being ripped off. And had he done it the right way, he'd have had checks in place to make sure that he was getting the money that he was owed, and instead he got, he allowed himself to be snookered.
Yeah, the fact that the man never bothered to learn the definition of what perpetuity means.
That's an easy one, like that's what we're just like, I don't even know what this word is. I'm gonna go show it to a lawyer. Like people in prison figure that shit out. Yeah. I don't understand what this word is. You tell me, lawyer.
So I'm not gonna lie, I found the ending of the series to be just a touch on the rush side. We have the murder occur in the penultimate episode, right near the end. Nick is in his office in New York. His boyfriend goes to the bathroom. An unseen man goes into the office. We hear a shot, and Nick is dead. And the final episode is incredibly rushed. The majority of it takes place in Switzerland, which is apparently this really did happen. Steve was so terrified of being caught that the only place he would talk to anyone about this was in Switzerland. So Ray Cologne had been caught on another offense, and he basically said, they said, look, you're going to do time for this. And he said, well, what if I give you the guy who killed Nick DeNoia? And yeah, he had him in the hotel room, and he was trying just so desperately to get him to confess to something with the FBI agents through the frickin' wall.
Yeah, that episode is way dragged out. It goes on forever, and it's so telegraphed what's happening. For me, it was. I almost wish they just cut the last episode and truncated the episode before it, killed Nick halfway through, and then the other half of the episode is him confessing on tape and going to prison. Because I think even there's an episode after that where where things are winding down. And my other issue with the way the show ends, and maybe this is just because I'm just tied to traditional structures, there was no title card, no end title card telling you what happened to anyone. And I was
it was overlaid on the scene where his body is taken into the ambulance.
But that was it. And whatever, I can't remember what information is conveyed in that, but I thought there would be more, to my point. Like, I thought there'd be more about Chippendales. I thought there'd be more about everyone else involved. I just felt like, as much as I like the show, I don't feel like it's a strong ending. I think there was a lot that was dragged over 2 to 3 episodes, and then at the very end, with him hanging himself in prison, I was like, meh. It's like by the time it was, I didn't get that. Like with Pam and Tommy, when it ends, like I truly felt for Pam. Even though it doesn't necessarily have like the tragic ending of if someone hanging themselves or whatever. Like I felt like they wrapped the story up well. I felt satisfied. This feels underwhelming.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's weird because it does feel dragged out, but it also feels rushed in the same way. It goes very quickly from his arrest to him in prison to his suicide. And then you get right after that, again, we get one title card, which I believe said something to the effect of, this is how he kept Chippendales from entering into basically it allowed his wife to hang on to the rights to Chippendale so she wouldn't be left completely without any source of income.
Right.
So there was that, and then you get the scene where I guess it's supposed to be like if everything, it's either Steve in his prime, or it's showing if Steve had not been totally paranoid because we see him walking through a very packed club, and he says hi to Nick, and he says hi to Denise, and Irene's up in the office, and he gives her the Coca-Cola, not cocaine.
Or a cocaine bear.
I'm going to be so happy when that movie is done and we stop with the jokes.
Really? Because we talked about Morbius all year. Hi, I'm Mark. Have we met?
Yeah, that's true. No, in fact, there's actually a cute little bit in the beginning because Steve originally is not a drinker and Irene's not a drinker, and they both meet drinking Coca-Cola, and it's really cute. I'll go ahead and say it, actually. The actors playing Steve and his wife have a lot of chemistry, and they're adorable together.
Oh, yeah.
I love the early scene where she's pointing out to him that if they cut down, I think it's like 30% on how much ice they put in the glasses, they'll save thousands of dollars a year. That's interesting, and it's cute.
Yeah. One, the actress, I think, has a really nice look to her. I think they had good on-screen chemistry. I enjoyed their pairing throughout the season.
Yeah, no, I thought all the actors did really good. I love the chemistry between Nick and Denise. And you really feel for Denise because she has fallen head over heels in love with Nick.
Okay, can we talk about... I hate to relate everything back to relationship dynamics, but there's a scene where Nick is clearly in love with... What's the investor's name, real quick?
Bradford.
Okay. Nick is clearly in love with Bradford. Nick regards Bradford as really his primary relationship. And he is trying to maintain a relationship with Juliette Lewis, but it's not nearly as important to him as this one with Bradford. And that comes out a couple of times throughout the season. And there's a scene, and I really related to this personally, where it's like Juliette Lewis is there with Nick, and they're together, and then Bradford enters the scene, and he turns away from her, and he's overly affectionate with Bradford, and his whole demeanor changes. You could see butterflies and doves fly out from between them, and Juliette Lewis is just there holding her dick, just kind of sitting there wish he loved me like that. Oh, Juliette Lewis. And her utter frustration, it's I've given you everything. I've told you have multiple sex partners, be in love with this other guy. I just don't leave me behind. Don't abandon me. And you're doing the one thing I asked you not to do. But what more was I supposed to do for you? And he's and this broke my heart. He basically was you're not Bradford. More or less is what he says. It's you're not him.
He says that, she's like, well, why can't you love me? And she points out that he was married for a time. And he says, yeah, because I was in love. And that pretty much spells it out that he doesn't love her.
Yeah, that was that Daisy Duck moment where you could actually see the heart shatter.
Yeah, exactly. Look, Lisa, you can actually pinpoint the exact moment where his heart rips apart. And here.
Yeah. When he was yeah, that's right. I was married because I was in love with her. And it's one of those where you can't make anyone else love you.
No.
They can be with you. They can be in a relationship with you, but you can't make them love you. Not the way you love them, not the way you want to be loved. And in that moment, you could see Juliet's heart just shatter into a million pieces. And credit to Juliette Lewis in that scene. You do more with a facial expression and a little bit of body movement than you do with any bit of dialogue. It's really, it was hard to watch, but brilliant at the same time.
I think it's something that a lot of us identify with. I think a lot of us have had cases where we have fallen head over heels with someone, and we've had that moment of realization of it doesn't matter how much we love them. They're never going to love us the same way. And it is so hard. And that look that she gives, we all do.
Yeah. It was heartbreaking to watch, that feeling of I gave you everything and it's still not enough. And Nick going, you're right. Nothing would have ever been enough. You're not the one.
They do love each other as friends. They have great chemistry. They're incredible business partners. They work super well together.
Right, but she was not the love of his life. Bradford was. And he tried, and to Nick's credit, I guess, I don't really know how else to say this. He tried to get her to understand that. He was I'm I'm not going to apologize for not loving you the way you want to be loved. I'm going to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to accept that. And I'm trying to move this forward so that we can continue to live our lives and you can be okay with this. And she's like stuck on this one thing. And he's like, you got to move on. Like, this isn't going to go the way you want it to go. I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy for you.
Yeah.
And
Now, they never do say,
can't,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm not the guy for you. And her reaction is, I don't accept that. Like, they're just at this impasse. And they cut away from the scene, but that's where they landed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they never actually explain. I mean, we're left to assume that Nick is gay, but it's also possible that he's just bisexual because, again, he was married to a woman.
Pansexual for all we know. Just, doesn't really matter what you are.
Yeah. Because, yeah, he does clearly prefer the company of men over women.
Mm-hmm. He can be pansexual like Lando Calrissian.
So, but yeah.
Stop beating that horse. It's already dead.
All right. So we've talked about the chemistry of the actors. We've talked about some of the episodes. We talked about the racism, and we've talked about the ego and the personality disorders.
I got to talk about that one scene though, where Bradford and Nick are in bed, and Nick is like, because I don't hate the Bradford character. There's nothing about him to hate. He's fine. But
I hate his singing in that one scene, but that's a personal thing.
Yeah, I'm not gonna hold that against him.
Mm-hmm.
But like they're in bed and and Nick's like, I want to go do my own thing. I want to get out from under Steve. Steve's a pain in the ass. All right, heard, acknowledged, can confirm. And so Bradford's like, why don't you just do Chippendales? And he was like, no, and he goes through this whole song and dance about it. And Bradford's like, what are you, an asshole? You have a winning brand. Who gives a fuck? Like, I much respect for characters that are written with common sense. I so often, and this is the reason why I'm bringing this up, so often in media, so in drama, entertainment, we have characters. We talked about this with Megan, where if everyone wasn't a complete idiot, you'd have no movie. Mm-hmm. To the point that I now feel the need to call out when people are written brilliantly and humanly to where I relate to them in that way. And Bradford saying something that anyone with common sense would have said. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Chippendales is a brand that is known. Just do it in New York. Stop getting in your own way because your butt hurt. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, I'm glad somebody wrote what was a very human, very true, very honest thing that a coherent person would say. It was one of those moments that made me key into the show more because I'm not sitting here. Even the crazy stuff that Steve does is crazy stuff someone might actually do. I've seen people behave this way. Nobody in this show, and this is my only point with this, so much of what we watch, the criticism becomes, no one would act that way. No one would do that. They're making them do that so that you can go to the next plot point. I never got that with Welcome to Chippendales. Everything here seemed believable if you understand human behavior. And you don't have to be a mental health professional. You just have to have lived and paid attention. And we've met all of these people and we've heard them say all of these things, if you catch my meaning.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I liked about this show. And what I also liked about Pam and Tommy is that recognition that these are human beings that would actually act this way. And that stuff is done for dramatic purposes to move the story structure along, but it's not so out of bounds to where you don't feel like you're watching a show now. You're watching a fiction of some kind because it's so poorly written. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying.
Sorry, still here. It's like you just suddenly stopped talking. I was like, wait,
yes,
what was the next...
nope, I was done. And you either react to it or move on to something else.
I was trying to, wait, what was my next point on here? Another thing that catches me is the whole scene with the interviews. We have Nick DeNoia going on TV and he's addressed as Mr. Chippendales. So Steve is just so outraged that he tries to go on local TV and we see that he has absolutely no screen presence whatsoever.
I had to fast forward through that stuff. I was like, I can't. I know what's happening here. I know what this is. That was cringe.
Very cringe. And again, we know people like that who, are smart, are capable. Put them in front of a camera and tell them to sell something, they can't do it. Hell, one of my original business partners, when I first brought her in, she had no sales experience. And I remember her trying to sell stuff at conventions, and she did not know how to approach the customers. And she couldn't remember the pitch on our jewelry and everything. But she got better. And that's the thing, is that Steve just clearly needed a lot more practice in that kind of a field, but he wasn't willing to do it. He's like, no, it has to be me right now, only me.
Right.
Because, that scene of him being interviewed was just, oh my God, was so bad.
So bad. Yeah, it was way cringe.
Well, is there anything else? I mean, I know it's only, it's 8 episodes, not 9 episodes. Is there anything else that we wanted to talk about?
Weirdly, and I know this is like, of course he says this. So when you were initially pitched Welcome to Chippendales, and you're like, oh, it's by the Pam and Tommy people. I'm like, oh, this is going to be like, there's going to be a lot of sex. Weirdly enough, the show is not about sex in any real way. Yes, there are, it's about a company that's selling you male nudity.
And there's a couple of sex scenes.
Yeah, and there's some sex scenes. But in terms of what this show is about, racism, the struggle to succeed, mental illness, betrayal. When you think about this, why are we telling this story? What cautionary tale? It's my second wire reference of the evening. What good does this do to put this in the paper? Why are we, when we talked about Pam and Tommy, just as a point of comparison, it was, let's talk about women's agency in sex and how we treat men and women differently. A guy can show his dick on a VHS tape and everyone says, good for you. A woman, a woman shows her vagina and we're ready to burn her at the stake for being a witch. Let's talk about that. Why are we this way? What is wrong with our culture? And the thing with Welcome to Chippendales is it is in no way talking about sex in any way, shape, or form. It addresses it in that, sure, women are horny too, but and like to see naked bodies, heard. But outside of that, what is its relevance to the culture and why are we talking about this? I think those discussions revolve around what does it take to succeed and what does success do to you mentally if you're not prepared to handle it. In terms of like cultural relevance, I think it's an interesting story, and there's definitely things to talk about. We spent almost an hour doing that, but strangely enough, the show about male strippers doesn't really speak to the idea of sex at all. It's just in the background. It's decoration. Exactly.
This really is more about being careful with the rise to fame. It's very much a be careful what you wish for story.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a scene where Steve's getting fitted for a suit, and he keeps telling the tailor to raise the cuff on his sleeve, and the tailor's like, well, "Why do you want that? That will look stupid." He's like, "Just do it." And you find out it's because he bought a Rolex watch, and he wants that watch. Yeah, he wants everyone to see that watch at all times.
Yep, because he has to show, look, I'm successful. I'm good. Look at me, I'm good. Don't throw me away. I'm valuable.
I think it does kind of raise to the point of how do you gauge your own success? When does enough become enough?
I think something that's been a reoccurring theme in my life from a mental health perspective, being happy with yourself so that you don't drag everybody else around you looking for them to validate you, looking for externalities to validate you because you can't validate yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what the show is pointing at, because even Nick, Nick can't just be happy with the success of Chippendales either. He needed Steve to validate him, and when Steve wouldn't do it, he threw a big old giant man tantrum.
Exactly.
I don't know if the show though does the best job of pointing that. I saw it, but I'm not. But the show tends to paint Nick. And this is really the last thing I wanted to talk about now that I'm that's occurring to me. I think the show's perspective is that Nick is mostly faultless, not totally, but he's sort of the good guy in this. And that's the tragedy of it all, is that the good guy gets killed. And I see Steve and Nick as more of the same guy, both needing external validation, both not getting it, both throwing giant man tantrums. They're just kind of throwing it at each other and hurting everyone around them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the great tragedy of this story.
Yeah, you realize how much better the show, or how much better the company would have been if Irene and Denise had just thrown their men out and run the whole thing themselves.
For the last time, Alexis, you can't throw me off my own show.
Damn.
You keep trying, but I'm going to keep throwing it back at you. I'm good. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there is a clear message, and I think you're right. You need to be satisfied with yourself more than anything. Because you're never going, because if you're just relying on external circumstances and external forces to validate your life,
you're going to be let down every single time.
It's never going to be enough.
Yeah, for sure.
There is no way that any single person, any group, anything in the world is ever going to equal just the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am enough.
Agreed.
Thank you, Tony Robbins. I actually don't know if Tony Robbins ever said anything like that. That was just the first self-help speaker.
Just fucking go with it, man. Like, I had no idea. Just sell it and go, man. Don't question yourself. I've said some weird, over 16 years of doing this, I've said some shit, and I'm just like, I'm standing by that.
Yeah, sorry. It's just like, okay, now let me get off the soapbox here and away from the lectern.
Off my soapbox.
All right. So if there's nothing else we want to talk about here, so yeah, Welcome to Chippendales is available on Hulu. It's really good. We do highly recommend it. There is also the A&E biography about the murders at Chippendales if you are interested in more of the true life story, because obviously this is very heavily dramatized. You can go check that out as well. It's really good. Although it's clear that that was meant to be watched over several days, because Andre and I binged all 4 episodes at once, and they repeat so much stuff. It's like, it's like you ever watch a TV series that it airs just once a week, and then you go back to the next episode and they re-air so much stuff because they're convinced the audience won't remember it from the previous week, and it's like, we just saw that. Yeah,
it's like, I know I've told the story before, but it's like when we went to go see the 98 SummerSlam at Madison Square Garden, and the theme was Highway to Hell. By the time, after having heard in the audience that the Highway to Hell theme at every time they went to break, by the end of it, we were like, I don't like AC/DC anymore.
Oh my God. I can believe that. I really can.
Yeah.
So, yes, we highly recommend both. Kumail Nanjiani is terrific in the role of Steve Banerjee. He really sells it. He does a wonderful job. All the actors in this do. It's a well-done series, and I think we are both really looking forward to what Robert Siegel is going to give us next. Again, I think, even though this wasn't as good as Pam and Tommy, I think it does follow up the series nicely, and I really am intrigued with what else he is going to give us in the future.
Yep. If you see what he's doing next and I don't pick it up first, I'm up for doing whatever else is in this line of shows. He's kind of like a Ryan Murphy, where like, oh, I'm interested in whatever it is you're doing. You typically at least hit the ball, if not a home run.
Speaking of Ryan Murphy, congratulations to Evan Peters winning the Golden Glove for Best Actor. Go check out our review of Murder, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Plug. Yep.
Alexis and I always doing the stuff for adults instead of this bullshit you people do, like Star Wars and Willow and ugh.
Well, we did do the episodes of Animaniacs and Cuphead.
I don't know what you're talking about. I only do adult stuff.
You don't want to do the 3rd season of Animaniacs?
Nope. I'm fucking done, man.
No, you're no fun.
That's me. No fun, Radulich.
Fine. I'll call Zach.
Good. You're going to make me jealous. You have as many boyfriends as you want.
All right, let's go ahead and get into plugs then. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Sure. I may never get to do Dope Sick at this point. She keeps canceling on me, so whatever. However, we did review Megan. We put up the episode. It's not on the website just yet because I'm backed up a bit, but we did on the audio feed and on YouTube. There is a review for A Christmas Story Christmas and The Fablemans from Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do. There's an unspoken issues for Superboy, Superman, Elseworlds. I had to fix this because initially when I downloaded it only downloaded half of it, and I didn't know it until it went up. So now, if you go back into the audio feed or you go on YouTube, you will find the entire hour and a half recording of myself and John War from a few years ago doing not just Carl Frampton versus Shmagegi McCreary, but also the main event of Oscar Valdez versus Adam Lopez. And it was Adam Lopez because Gutierrez was 11 pounds overweight. He's fat is the problem there. On Sunday, prior Sunday, my wife, Pat Mullen, and I, back in the 2016, when David Bowie passed away, we did a special Metal Hammer of Doom where we listened to David Bowie music and we told stories and celebrated the life of a true treasure in music. Tonight, we are doing another Metal Hammer of Doom jukebox. We're going to look at the best albums, something like I think Metal Live Wire, whatever the name of the blog is, did the top 50 albums of 2022. We're going to go through that list and tear it apart because that's what you do in a podcast. This weekend, they'll probably, before the end of the weekend, I will put up the episode of Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do that I was on, which was the 2022 year in review. We had a good time with that. I like those guys a lot, and we had a lot of fun talking about a lot of agreement. And the ones that weren't on my list were just movies I didn't see, like Barbarian. But there wasn't anything like crazy, like something that was on someone's worst list was on someone else's best list, which I think is what happened last year. There was some wild disagreements. This year, we were all more or less on the same page. So it was a fun conversation. This weekend is a re-airing of Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, Superman's Enemies, Lex Luthor, Brainiac, Berserko, the Bizarro, whatever the fuck his name is. Brainiac, if I haven't said that one already. And then on Sunday, I'm going through slowly but surely the old Metal Hammer of Dooms from the Blog Talk Radio days. So we're going to re-air Children of Bodom, Halo of Blood. Next week, we've got a couple of things here. Ronnie Adams has been named co-chair, co-president of TV stuff. he got access to StreamYard is what happened. And him and Pat want to talk Tulsa King. So they're going to. That's going to go Monday night, assuming they don't cancel. Tuesday, myself and Robert Winfrey will be reviewing Plane. Wednesday, we'll be back 10 o'clock at night. I'm going to put Gavin and Alexis in the same room and see if they fight it out. Like a dehumidifier and a humidifier. So yes, myself, Gavin Napier, and Alexis are going to review Kaleidoscope. I am watching Kaleidoscope, the show where it doesn't matter what order you watch it in linear order, date order, chronological. That's the word. What order are you watching it in, Alexis?
Chromatic order, because every episode is titled after a color. So I am watching essentially in the order of a rainbow. But this is really something because nearly every listing that we've seen so far says the best way to watch the shows is to end with white. But to watch in true chromatic order, I got to start with white.
Oh, interesting. You're going to start with the finale and work your way backwards like Memento.
Kind of, yeah. But again, they say that you're supposed to be able to watch it in any order. So I feel that this is really putting it to the test.
So I did a little bit of research. There was an article that I posted in our group chat and on Facebook from CNET about the orders to watch. And as you were saying, and to sort of play off of that, the common belief is that there's enough surprises and twists and stuff in the white episode that the consensus is that should be the last one you watch, no matter what order you watch these in. Mm-hmm. I can't do it. I don't care. I'm watching it in chronological order because I can't handle anything else.
Isn't Jesse joining us as well? He was asking about it, what other orders everyone was reviewing in, because I don't think Gavin has revealed what order he's using.
Yeah, I don't know. Just no clue. I will get with him before next Wednesday, and we will have a pizza party. Thursday.
I think Jesse is just really watching them in release order. He's basically just going from, the order that the show is listed on Netflix. I could be wrong, but I think that's what he said he's doing.
I think you're right. Thursday, I'm not recording anything, but it was supposed to happen this week. He delayed a week. Ronnie Adams of the Screaming Boy podcast is going to do the future of Dungeons and Dragons, a Screaming Boy one shot is what he tells me. So that allegedly is happening a week from tonight. And that is all I've got. I'm done talking now.
All right. Well, for me, since Mark doesn't pay me, that I will go ahead and tell you about my company. That's Honeysuckle Rose. Yeah, just because I'm broadcasting from the void doesn't mean I can't see when you do that. Exactly. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fandom meets fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic.
I'm not stopping you from talking.
Yeah, you're right. You're not. All right.
Not me, you slop artist.
Oh, damn it. You know my weakness. Chuck Jones cartoons.
Yes. You're not going to duck amuck me, kid sister.
A close up, you jerk. A close up.
End the fucking show already.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so yes, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. Go ahead and check out our Etsy and Handmade at Amazon shops. We just uploaded a ton of new jewelry. We have a bunch of brand new wire wrap dice and a new collection based around the hit Netflix show Wednesday. I'm really excited about that. It's going to be a while before we're back on the road. This is our down period. There's not a lot of shows in the winter, and I'm kind of terrified of driving in winter weather, so I try to abstain from, long travels this time of year. But look into the future. We will be at Planet Comic-Con in March here in Kansas City. It's our home show. We always love appearing there. For horror fans, we just found out that the director and lead actor from Terrifier are going to be making appearances at Planet Comic-Con. That's really big. Really excited about that. And of course, you know that we have a very long line of horror-influenced jewelry, and we will be bringing our A game for that. So again, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. And so for Mark and myself, this has been TV Party Tonight, and we're saying be well, behave, be safe, and knock it off, Mark.
Let's be well, be safe, and scissory, bro.